What happens when the life you built falls apart at the exact moment you're bringing a new one into the world? For Erin Sterling, her luxury, penthouse, high society life and picture-perfect marriage were about to shatter. She wasn't at a gala. She wasn't on a yacht. She was in a cold hospital bed, a high-risk pregnancy, threatening her and her baby. And that's when she saw it. Not a get-well-soon card from her husband, but a TMZ alert, a grainy photo. Her husband, his lips on a celebrity. And the real nightmare was just beginning. The penthouse at 157 wasn't just a home. It was a fortress of glass and steel, suspended 80 floors above Manhattan. From here, Erin Sterling could look down on Central Park, a perfect green rectangle that looked from this height as tidy and controlled as her life was supposed to be. Erin had been an art curator, known for her sharp eye and her ability to spot the next big thing. That's how she'd met Damien Sterling. He wasn't an artist. He was the buyer. The CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech conglomerate so vast its tentacles reached into biotech AI and private aerospace. He was handsome, ruthless in business, and devastatingly charming. He'd collected her, she sometimes thought, just as he collected rare art and faster jets. Now at 32, Erin was 36 weeks pregnant with their first child, a boy. And she had never felt more alone. The silence in the penthouse was a physical weight. Damien was working. He was always working. The last 3 months had seen him transform from an attentive, if busy husband into a ghost who smelled faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers. A scent she'd clocked as the wildly expensive Baccarat Rouge 540, a fragrance too cloying for her own tastes. "It's just stress, Erin," he'd murmured, kissing her forehead before the Vanity Fair party last week. "The coup projections are brutal. I never see you," she'd whispered, her hand on the swell of her belly. "You'll see me all the time when the baby's here," he'd promised, adjusting the cuffs of his Tom Ford suit. "I'll take the whole month off. We'll fly to St. Bart's." But his eyes were already past her, focused on the elevator on the world outside. Tonight, the loneliness was mixed with a sharp, radiating pain in her lower back and a sudden alarming swelling in her ankles. Her feet looked like overstuffed sausages. She'd checked her blood pressure on the home cuff Dr. Lena Harding had insisted on. The numbers were terrifyingly high. She called Damien, straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Damien Sterling. Leave a message. I'll get back to you if it's important." "Damien, darling, it's me," she said, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "I'm not feeling well. The swelling it's bad. Dr. Harding's service said I should be monitored. Please call me. Please." She waited 10 minutes. No reply. She called again. Voicemail. And again. Voicemail. A hot, sharp fear, entirely separate from the physical pain, lanced through her. He wasn't in a meeting. He'd turned his phone off. She grabbed her phone and opened the car service app. Her fingers shaking so badly, she misspelled New York Presbyterian. She couldn't wait. Wiping away a tear of frustration, she waddled to the elevator, a lone, pregnant woman in a silk pajama set, descending from her glass tower to find a cab on the hostile streets of Midtown. The driver, seeing her distress, ran 2 red lights. "You okay, lady?" "I just need to get to the hospital," Erin breathed, clutching her stomach as another wave of pain, sharp and acidic, crested. "Please hurry." She was admitted immediately. The bright, sterile triage room was a blur of activity. "Mrs. Sterling, your blood pressure is 170/110. You're in a hypertensive crisis. Preeclampsia, a young doctor said, his face grim. We need to get you on magnesium sulfate immediately to prevent a seizure, and we need to monitor the baby. They wheeled her to a private room in the maternity ward. As the cool, metallic-tasting magnesium drip entered her vein, Erin looked at the empty chair beside her bed. It was 9:00 p.m. Her husband, the father of her child, was unreachable. And as the drugs fogged her mind, a single terrifying thought pushed through. He's not in a meeting. He's with her, whoever she is. The next 12 hours were a medicated hell. The magnesium sulfate made Erin feel like she was breathing through a wet blanket. Her body was on fire, yet she shivered. Nurses came and went, their faces masks of professional concern, drawing blood, checking the fetal heart monitor, a steady rhythmic thump, thump, thump. That was her only anchor. Damien finally arrived at 10:00 a.m. He didn't burst in frantic with worry. He strolled in holding 2 cups of coffee and a designer pastry bag from Maison Kaiser. He looked immaculate in a grey Loro Piana zip-up, his hair perfectly coiffed. He looked like he'd just come from a casual brunch, not a frantic night-long search for his hospitalized wife. Erin, my God, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice a smooth baritone of concern. He kissed her sweaty forehead. My phone died. I was in a marathon negotiation with the Tokyo investors. The time difference is a killer. I just got your messages when I plugged it in. I came as fast as I could. It was a perfect lie. So perfect, so practiced, that Erin, fogged by medication and fear, almost believed him. She wanted to believe him. Preeclampsia, Damien, she whispered, her tongue thick. They said it's severe. We might have to deliver early. He cooed, taking her hand. But his grip was loose. His eyes darted to the heart monitor, to the IV drip, and then inevitably to the phone in his own hand. Whatever Dr. Harding says, whatever the best doctors say, they'll do it. I'll pay for it. Don't you worry about a thing. He kissed her again. I have to make a few calls. The board is in a panic about this Tokyo deal. I'll be right in the hallway. I love you. He slipped out, leaving the scent of expensive coffee and Baccarat Rouge 540 in his wake. Erin lay there, her heart as heavy and swollen as her ankles. The lie was too easy. The performance too smooth. The smell of that perfume was the final betrayal. It wasn't his. It was on his clothes. Her hand drifted to her own phone on the bedside table. She needed a distraction, anything to escape the beeping machines and the cold dread in her stomach. She opened Instagram. A mistake. Her feed was a curated stream of perfection she could no longer relate to. But then she swiped to the Explore page, which fed her a steady diet of celebrity gossip. And there it was. A post from TMZ. The headline, Tech Titan Damien Sterling's late-night negotiation at Club Mogador. Who's the mystery? Brunette. The photo was grainy, taken from across the street. But it was unmistakable. There was Damien not in a boardroom, but in the velvet-roped entrance of one of the city's most exclusive and debauched clubs. It was time-stamped 2:15 a.m. He wasn't alone. He was in a heated argument, or perhaps a passionate embrace. It was hard to tell with a woman. A very famous woman. Serafina Volt. A singer-turned-actress-turned-lifestyle influencer. Serafina was the kind of celebrity who was famous simply for being famous. She was all high cheekbones, surgically enhanced lips, and a reputation for collecting powerful married men. Erin's vision tunneled. She scrolled to the next photo in the carousel. This one was clearer. Damien's hand was on Serafina's waist. Her head was thrown back in laughter, and on his wrist, glinting under the paparazzi flash, was the watch Erin had given him for their 3rd anniversary, a Patek Philippe. Calatrava rose gold with the engraving "My Anchor, My Love, E." The digital dagger was twisted by a text message that buzzed through at that exact moment. It was from an old frenemy from the art world, a woman named Chloe. Text: Erin, darling, I saw you missed the charity benefit last night. Probably for the best. Your husband made enough of a scene for the both of you. This was taken at 1 a.m. at Carbone, just before they went to Mogador. I am so sorry. Thought you should... No. The attached photo was crystal clear. It wasn't a paparazzi shot. It was taken from a nearby table. Damien and Serafina Volt were not arguing. They were kissing. Deeply. His hand was tangled in her long, dark hair. A bottle of Petrus wine, a $5,000 indulgence, sat on the table between them. This was taken at 100 a.m. At 100 a.m., Erin was alone in a triage room, terrified she was losing her baby. The heart monitor beside her bed began to shriek its steady rhythm, accelerating into a frantic, panicked tattoo. Beep, 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 beep! A nurse burst in. Mrs. Sterling. Erin. What's wrong? Erin just held up the phone, her hand shaking. He. Your pressure is spiking. 80, 120. I need Dr. Harding in here now. Code blue. Potential seizure. Erin didn't hear them. The world was narrowing to a single point of white-hot pain. The last thing she saw before she lost consciousness was Damien a few feet away in the hallway, laughing into his phone. When Erin awoke, the world was fuzzy and tasted of ash. Dr. Harding was standing over her, her face a mask of exhaustion and anger. Erin, can you hear me? The baby, Erin croaked. The baby is stable. You are not. You had a seizure, Erin. An eclamptic seizure. We stabilized you, but your blood pressure is still dangerously high. We have to get this baby out. Today. Okay, Erin whispered. Today. Your husband. I've had him barred from the floor. Dr. Harding said, her voice dropping to a low growl. My nurse told me what she saw on that phone. That man is a hazard to your health. I am for medical purposes classifying him as a non-essential visitor. Do you understand, Thor? A fierce, protective, primal surge of energy cut through Erin's drug-addled haze. It was the first time in months she had felt anything other than fear. It was pure, unadulterated rage. Yes, Erin said, her voice stronger. Thank you. Keep him out. Good. Now I need you to rest. The OR is being prepped. We'll move for a C-section in 2 hours. As soon as the doctor left, Erin picked up her phone. She had 2 tasks. First, she posted a single photo to her own private Instagram. It was a picture of her hand IVs, snaking from her skin, her massive diamond engagement ring looking obscene and foreign. The caption diagnosed with severe preeclampsia in hospital. Please pray for our baby. She didn't tag Damien. She didn't have to. The frenemy Chloe would see it. The whole high society world would see it. They would see her post, see the TMZ and Page 6 articles, look at the timestamps and do the math. The social execution would be swift. Second, She made a call. Not to her mother, not to her friends, but to the one person she knew could handle this. "Harriet Sloane, please." Harriet was the most feared divorce attorney in New York, a woman who didn't just win cases, she annihilated opponents. "This is Harriet." "Harriet, it's Erin Sterling. I'm at New York Presbyterian Maternity Ward Room 812. I need you to draw up divorce papers." There was a pause. "Erin, are you all right? I thought you weren't due for another month." "I'm in premature labor. Preeclampsia brought on by, let's call it, extreme spousal misconduct. He's been having an affair, Harriet, with Serafina Volt." A sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Oh, Erin, that is a new level of scum. Is there proof?" "TMZ page 6 and a personal photo from Chloe at Carbone. He was with her last night while I was being admitted. I had a seizure about an hour ago. He caused it." Harriet's voice was pure steel. "The emotional distress, the abandonment. Oh, we have him. We have him cold. Erin, you are in a high-risk medical situation. Do you want to do this now?" "I want him served," Erin said, a single hot tear rolling down her cheek. "I want him served before they put me under. I will not be married to him when my son is born. I want full emergency custody. I want the penthouse. I want him out." "I'll have a messenger there in 60 minutes, Harriet said. "Do not sign anything else. Do not talk to him. I am on my way to a judge right now to file an emergency order. You just focus on you and that baby. We'll handle the monster." An hour later, a furious pounding rattled Erin's door. It wasn't a nurse. Erin, what the hell is this?" "Let me in." "The nurses won't let me in." "Your Instagram. What are you doing?" "You're making me look like a fool." It was Damien. He was bellowing in the hallway. His mask of charm completely gone, revealing the raging narcissist beneath. Erin pressed the call button for the nurse. "Please," she whispered, "get him away." Just then, a small, unassuming man in a bike helmet slipped past the nurse's station and knocked gently. "Mrs. Sterling." "Yes. Courier for you. From Sloane Legal." The man handed her a thick sheaf of papers. Erin clicked a pen, her hand trembling. Damien saw the exchange from the hallway, and his voice changed from rage to ice. "Erin, don't you dare. Don't you dare do this. You are hormonal. You're sick. You don't know what you're doing. This is my child, too." "It's a little late for that," Erin said, her voice just loud enough to carry. She propped the papers on the rolling hospital tray, the same one that held her cup of ice chips. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Motion for emergency sole custody. Motion for exclusive use of marital residence. She signed the last page with a flourish, the ink slick and dark. "Nurse," she called, her voice clear. "Please give these to my husband. He's the one yelling in the hallway." The nurse, a kind woman named Jessica, who had been coaching Erin's breathing, took the papers with a grim smile. She walked to the door, opened it just a crack, and slid the papers out. "You've been served, Mr. Sterling." A horrifying sound, a strangled animalistic roar of pure fury echoed down the hall. Then silence. Erin lay back against the pillows, her body shaking, but her mind, for the first time in a year, was perfectly terrifyingly clear. "Okay," she said to the empty room. "Now, let's go have this baby." The C-section was a surreal, detached experience. Erin felt the pulling and tugging behind the sterile blue curtain, But she felt no pain. Her mind was 1,000,000 miles away, replaying the look on Damien's face as he saw the legal papers. "Okay, Erin. A little more pressure," Dr. Harding said. "And? Here he is." There was a beat of silence, and then a thin, furious wail that cut through the silence of the OR. "He's beautiful, Erin," the nurse said, her voice thick. "He's a fighter." They cleaned him and wrapped him a tiny red screaming bundle. He weighed only 4 pounds, 2 ounces. They placed him on Erin's chest for a brief second before he had to be rushed to the NICU. "Leo," Erin whispered, kissing his downy head. "Your name is Leo." Leo the lion. For his strength. For the strength he had just given her. As Erin was wheeled into the recovery room, the outside world came flooding back in. Her phone, which a nurse had dutifully plugged in, was exploding. The story wasn't just on TMZ. It was on CNN, Forbes, the New York Times. Sterling Innovations, CEO in hospital showdown. Pregnant wife serves divorce papers from hospital bed amid Serafina Volt affair. Damien Sterling locked out of maternity ward as wife has emergency C-section. Erin's single Instagram post, contrasted with the paparazzi shots of Damien and Serafina, had painted a picture so damning, so viscerally awful that public opinion had turned overnight. Damien wasn't just a philanderer. He was a monster. Sterling Innovations stock had opened 22% down. The board of directors, a notoriously conservative group of old money titans, was in an emergency session. Damien's family man image, which he had cultivated so carefully, was the bedrock of their brand's trust and integrity platform. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He had violated his fiduciary duty. Meanwhile, Serafina Volt's PR team was in a tailspin. They'd tried to release a statement. Serafina and Damien have a deep and meaningful connection. Their relationship is not a fling. She is heartbroken to learn of Mrs. Sterling's medical complications and wishes her a speedy recovery. The internet's response was brutal. The comments on Serafina's last Instagram's post, a candid shot of her meditating, were a waterfall of snake emojis and vitriol. Wishing her a speedy recovery now. You weren't so worried at 2 a.m. at Mogador. Homewrecker. He left his pregnant wife for this. Erin was in her private recovery room, a bleak beige box. She was alone. Her son was in a plastic box in the NICU. Her husband was... where a text came through. It was Damien. Text, "You have ruined me. You did this. You will pay for this, Erin. You and that lawyer bitch. You think you're getting the penthouse. You're getting nothing. I will fight you until you have nothing left." A new kind of terror, cold and sharp, replaced the rage. What had she done? She was a new mother, postpartum weak, and she had just declared war on one of the most powerful and ruthless men in the world. A soft knock came at the door. It was Harriet Sloane, her shark-like attorney, carrying a briefcase that looked like it was made of solid steel. "Don't you dare respond to that text," Harriet said, her voice like ice cubes rattling in a glass. "I've already seen the stock tickers. He's panicking." "Good." "He'll ruin me," Erin whispered, tears welling. "No, he won't," Harriet said, pulling a chair up to the hospital bed. "Because he's an arrogant fool, and he's made the one mistake I've been waiting for." "The affair?" "No," Harriet said, a predatory smile touching her lips. "He's lying about the Tokyo deal. I've just had a very interesting chat with my forensic accountant. There is no Tokyo deal, Erin. There's just a $50 million wire transfer to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. a shell corporation owned by one S, Vault. Erin stared. He was paying her. No, darling, Harriet said, opening her briefcase. He wasn't paying her. He was partnering with her. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. The NICU became Erin's new world. The rest of the hospital with its gossip and its drama faded away. Her world shrank to the 2-by-3-foot plastic bassinet that held her son. She sat for hours, her hand through the porthole, her finger held tight by Leo's tiny, perfect fist. His rhythmic breathing, aided by a small tube, was the only thing that mattered. Damien, true to his word, had launched a full-scale legal assault. He filed a countermotion claiming Erin was mentally unstable and hormonally compromised. He painted her as a hysterical woman who had trapped him with a pregnancy. He demanded a paternity test. He claimed he was the victim of a calculated social media smear campaign. Simultaneously, Erin's credit cards were declined. The Amex Black, the Visa. Even her private checking account, which he'd always kept topped up, was frozen. She was a billionaire's wife, a new mother, and she couldn't afford the vending machine snacks in the NICU waiting room. "He's cut me off," Erin told Harriet in a panicked whisper from a hospital payphone, the only line she trusted wouldn't be bugged. "Standard issue narcissist playbook." Harriet's voice crackled back. "Starve them out. Don't worry. I've already filed a motion for emergency spousal support and legal fees. A judge is going to laugh at his instability claim, especially since we have Dr. Harding's sworn affidavit that his actions caused the eclamptic seizure. But the money, Harriet, he can't just take it all. Can he?" "Oh, Erin," Harriet sighed. "That's where the news gets worse. And then much, much better." Harriet explained. The $50 million transfer to Serafina Volt's shell company, Volt Productions, LLC, was just the tip of the iceberg. "My forensic accountant, Mr. Chen, has been a busy boy. Damien hasn't been working late for months. He's been systematically liquidating assets. He's been siphoning money from Sterling Innovations, millions at a time, into a series of offshore accounts. He's embezzling." Erin's mind reeled. "From his own company." "He was Erin," Harriet said gravely. "He was planning to run. Run with her. With her. He was planning to bankrupt the company, pin the blame on a bad market, and leave the board, the shareholders, and you holding the bag. He was going to disappear to a non-extradition country with Serafina and about $200 million in stolen funds. The affair wasn't a mistake. It was an exit plan. He was never going to St. Bart's with you, Erin. He was going to St. Bart's with her to finalize the new accounts." The betrayal was so vast, so complete, that Erin felt the air leave her lungs. It wasn't just love that had been fake. It was everything. The Q4 projections, the late nights, the Tokyo deal. It was all a meticulous criminal charade. He wanted me in the hospital," Erin said, the realization dawning. "The stress. He was trying to make me sick, so I'd be out of the way, so I wouldn't ask questions. His timing was just a little off," Harriet said, her voice pure acid. "He didn't count on you finding out, or on TMZ being so efficient." "What do we do?" Erin whispered, looking at her tiny son. "The divorce is now the secondary fight, Erin. This is a federal crime. We have two options. We can use this as leverage to get the biggest divorce settlement in New York history. He'll give you everything to keep you quiet. Or, Harriet said, we give it to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. We give them the wire transfers, the offshore account numbers, everything. We give them Damien Sterling and Serafina Volt on a silver platter." "What? What happens to me? To Leo? You become a cooperating witness. You get full immunity, not that you need it. The government will unfreeze your original premarital assets, and the board of Sterling Innovations, desperate to distance themselves from Damien, will make a generous settlement with you to avoid a shareholder lawsuit. You'll be set for life, you and Leo. And Damien, he goes to prison for a very, very long time. So does she. Erin looked through the glass at Leo. He was so small, so fragile. He had been born into a war zone. He deserved peace. He deserved a life free of a monster like Damien. Do it, Erin said, her voice shaking, but resolute. Burn them. Burn them both to the ground. The next 8 weeks were a war fought on 2 fronts. The first was a brutal media campaign waged by Damien. The second was silent, a meticulous legal trap being laid in the quiet, carpeted rooms of the Carlisle Hotel. Erin and Leo's secure, undisclosed location was a 3-bedroom suite registered to Harriet's law firm. It was opulent, but it was a prison. Zev, a quiet, broad-shouldered man with watchful eyes who headed her new security detail, was a constant, silent presence. Erin's days were a surreal blend of new motherhood and criminal investigation. She would be breastfeeding Leo his tiny, starfish hand splayed on her chest, while meeting with 2 somber, dark-suited attorneys from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Mrs. Sterling. Alani. She corrected her voice, still hoarse from her hospital stay. My name is Erin Alani now. Ms. Alani, the attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Chen, corrected herself. Ms. Chen's accounting is the skeleton. We need you to provide the flesh. We need to paint a picture of his state of mind. And so Erin recounted the last 6 months, the sudden Tokyo trips, the hushed angry phone calls, the specific cloying scent of Baccarat Rouge 540, the way he'd dismiss her concerns about her health, the casual cutting remarks about her hormonal state. She provided a full detailed calendar of every night he was working late, which when cross-referenced with Mr. Chen's data, matched perfectly with the dates of the largest wire transfers. She was not just a wronged wife. She was the prosecution's star witness, the human key to unlocking the motive. The feds weren't just building a case for embezzlement. They were building a case for a cold, calculated conspiratorial exit with her and their newborn son as acceptable collateral damage. Meanwhile, Damien, completely oblivious to the federal storm clouds gathering, was fighting his own war, a war of public opinion. Cut off from Erin, he had unleashed his PR team. The Page 6 and TMZ articles which had once been his downfall were now his chosen weapons. Damien Sterling's pain. I just want to see my son. Friends fear for Erin Sterling. She's not herself prone to hysteria. A husband's heartbreak. Damien Sterling's team claims severe postpartum paranoia. He was painting her as unstable, a hysterical hormonal woman who had been manipulated by a vulture attorney. He was the victim. He was the loving father, locked out by a vindictive, unbalanced gold digger. The master stroke of his hubris, however, was his decision to control the narrative with Serafina Volt. They were in this together, after all. Their love, they decided, was the real story. In an act of breathtaking arrogance, they booked a sit-down interview on America's Morning, the nation's highest-rated, softest-focus morning talk show. Erin, you have to see this, Harriet said, walking into the suite. She didn't look angry. She looked electric. It's time. Harriet clicked on the large flat-screen TV. Erin, holding a sleeping Leo to her chest, sat down. There they were, Damien and Serafina, seated on a plush beige couch bathed in soft, forgiving light. Damien was in a cashmere sweater, looking like a bereaved college professor. Serafina was in a cream-colored silk blouse, her dark hair artfully tousled. A single perfect tear was tracing a path down her cheek. "It's just been so hard," Serafina whispered, her voice trembling. "People don't understand our connection. It wasn't. It's a deep, spiritual bond. Damien was in a toxic, loveless marriage for years. He's a kind, gentle soul," she continued, placing a hand on his. "He's been portrayed as a monster, but he is the victim here." The host, a woman known for her sympathetic interviews, turned to Damien. "Damien, you have a son. A newborn son you allegedly have not been allowed to see." Damien looked directly into the camera, his eyes practicing a sincerity Erin once mistook for love. "Cynthia, I just want to co-parent. My son is everything to me. Erin, if you're watching, please, I'm begging you. This has gone too far. Stop listening to the lawyers. Let me see my son. Let's heal." Erin felt the bile rise in her throat. He's a fool," Harriet finished, her eyes gleaming. "And he just confirmed on live national television that he is at Studio 7A in Midtown. He's not in a car. He's not on a plane. He's sitting on a beige couch, waiting." As if on cue, Harriet's phone buzzed. She looked at it. A single text. "We are green." "Turn up the volume, Erin," Harriet said. On screen, Damien was laughing at a softball question about their future. "We're just taking it one day at a time." Suddenly, the studio's fire exit doors, visible just behind Serafina's head, burst open. The studio audience, which had been silent, gasped. Damien's smile froze. The host looked confused. "What's going on? Is this—" Two men in dark suits, followed by two more, in tactical vests marked FBI, walked directly onto the set. They did not run. They walked with a heavy, deliberate pace that was far more terrifying. "Mr. Damien Sterling," the lead agent said, his voice booming in the suddenly silent studio. Damien's face, broadcast in high definition to 12 million people, was a mask of confusion and cracking arrogance. "Yes, we're in the middle of a segment." The agent pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "You are under arrest for 12 counts of federal wire fraud securities, fraud embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit money laundering." Serafina let out a small, strangled shriek. Damien stood up, his practiced calm returning. "There has been a serious mistake. Your lawyer will be informed," the agent said, his voice devoid of all emotion. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click-click of the handcuffs was the only sound in the studio. It was as loud as a gunshot. Damalion's face wasn't angry. It was for the first time blank. The performer had no more lines. The camera, in a moment of sheer predatory instinct, zoomed in on his cuffed hands, then on his stunned, ashen face. "Miss Serafina Volt," the second agent said, turning to the actress who seemed to have shrunk into the couch. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering and failure to report a felony. Please stand up." The spiritual bond was broken. Serafina began to sob a high, thin, animalistic wail of pure terror. "I didn't do anything. He made me. He told me the money was clean. He's a liar. A liar. The camera didn't flinch. The live feed cut to the stunned, pale face of the host, then to a chaotic, "We are experiencing technical difficulties" screen. But it was too late. The entire world had just watched the reckoning. In the Carlisle suite, Erin was shaking. The baby, disturbed by her trembling, started to fuss. She held him tighter, burying her face in his soft hair, and for the first time since that night in the hospital, she wept. But they were not tears of fear. They were tears of pure, unadulterated release. Harriet Sloane just watched the screen, a small, grim, deeply satisfied smile on her face. And scene. The world Erin returned to was not the one she had left. When she and Leo were finally quietly discharged from New York Presbyterian, they did not go to the glass fortress at 157. The penthouse, with its sweeping, indifferent views, had become a monument to a life that was not only over, but had been a lie from its very inception. The click of the high-security locks, the whisper of the private elevator, the scent of Baccarat Rouge 540, that seemed to have permeated the very marble, it was all a mausoleum. Instead, Harriet Sloane, now acting as not just an attorney, but as Erin's de facto field marshal, had secured a garden-level apartment in a pre-war, absurdly private building on Gramercy Park. It was registered to a shell corporation, and the only key belonged to Harriet. The apartment was warm, filled with dark wood, and had a small, walled-in garden, where the only sounds were the cooing of pigeons and the distant wail of city sirens. It was a bunker, but a beautiful one. For the first 3 months of Leo's life, Erin's world shrank to the 4 walls of that apartment. Her days were a relentless, milky-scented cycle of feeding, changing, and rocking a fragile 4-pound infant who still seemed more concept than child. She was a ghost haunting her own life, a mother in name, a witness in legal status, and a prisoner in practice. The victory that the world saw the hospital bed divorce, the ultimate betrayal, the billion-dollar takedown, felt in the 300 a.m. silence like ash. The newspapers delivered by Harriet's silent paralegal were a grotesque spectacle. Sterling in shackles, CEO denied bail, a profound flight risk. Volt sings Serafina's shocking testimony to save herself. Where is Erin, the billion-dollar widow, vanishes. Erin, battling the steep, crashing waves of postpartum hormones and the deep, visceral trauma of what had been done to her, felt no triumph. She just felt numb. "He's been indicted on 12 federal counts," Harriet said, her voice crisp over the phone. Erin was balancing the receiver on her shoulder, trying to coax Leo to take a bottle. Wire fraud securities, fraud embezzlement conspiracy. The list is poetic. The Southern District is not playing. They are going to bury him. And her, Erin asked, her voice flat. There was a pause. Harriet, a woman who lived for the kill, sounded almost disgusted. Serafina Volt. She took a plea deal, Erin, a spectacular one. She rolled over on him so fast she left skid marks. She's not going to prison. No, Harriet spat. She agreed to testify in open court. She gave them everything. Private recordings, his burner phones, the passwords to the Cayman accounts. She painted herself as a victim, a poor, love-struck fool, coerced by a mesmerizing and abusive sociopath. In exchange for her full, tear-soaked cooperation, she's getting 2 years probation, a $10 million forfeiture, which she'll probably earn back on a tell-all book and community service. She'll likely spend it raising awareness about coercive romantic relationships at a spa in Malibu. Erin's hand tightened on the bottle. So she wins. She doesn't get 25 years in federal prison, Harriet corrected. That is not winning. She's a pariah. Her career is over. Her name is a punchline. But Damien is the main event. The trial was set for 6 months later. Erin had no intention of attending. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her. She would not let him infect the courtroom with his presence watching her, analyzing her. Her testimony was provided via a sealed affidavit, along with Dr. Harding's medical records and a brutal minute-by-minute timeline of the night she'd had her seizure. Erin was by then physically recovering. Leo was gaining weight. He'd developed a small hiccuping laugh that sounded like a squeaky toy. But mentally, Erin was still in that hospital bed. Harriet, sensing this, made a calculated move. I'm going to the sentencing, Erin. And so are you. No, I can't. I won't. You're not going for him. You're going for you. You are not a victim hiding in an apartment. You are a survivor. You are the woman who brought him down. The world needs to see you not as the poor, pregnant wife, but as the one who won. You will sit in that courtroom, you will listen to the judge read the verdict, and you will close this chapter. And then you will never ever have to see his face again. So on a cold Tuesday in March, Erin Sterling for the last time put on a suit of armor. It was not a Chanel suit or a Gucci dress. It was a simple, severe, dark charcoal wool dress by the row. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, unadorned chignon. Her only jewelry was a pair of simple pearl earrings. She wore no makeup. She was not there to be a society wife. She was there as a witness. She entered the Daniel Patrick Moynihan courthouse, flanked by Harriet and 2 private security guards, a silent grey shark cutting through a sea of shouting paparazzi. Erin, how do you feel? Erin, are you asking for the max? Erin, Damien says he loves you. She didn't flinch. She stared straight ahead, her face a mask of glacial calm. The courtroom was a zoo. Damien, in a baggy, ill-fitting suit, his expensive tailoring long gone, was seated at the defendant's table. He looked smaller. The charisma had been hollowed out, leaving behind a sallow, twitchy shell. He had lost weight, and his hair was thinning. He saw her. His eyes, those same eyes that had promised her the world, widened. And for a second he smiled a desperate, pathetic flash of his old charm. See, we are still connected, you and me. Erin met his gaze. She held it for a full, agonizing 3 seconds. And she felt nothing. Not hatred, not love, not pity. Just a vast, cold emptiness. She broke eye contact, turned her head, and looked at the judge. She never looked at him again. Damien Sterling was found guilty, on all counts. The judge, a woman named Fiona Kelleher, read her sentencing statement with a quiet fury. Mr. Sterling, I have been on this bench for 20 years. I have seen men who stole because they were hungry men who killed in a fit of passion, and men who were simply born into a cycle of violence. You are none of those. You are a man who had everything, a thriving business, the respect of your peers, a wife who was, by all accounts, a devoted and brilliant partner, and a child on the way. You did not just steal money. You stole livelihoods. You stole pensions. You stole trust. And in a final act of grotesque narcissistic cruelty, you abandoned your wife, who was in a life-threatening medical crisis, to continue your criminal conspiracy. The fact that your actions caused that medical crisis is a moral stain that this court unfortunately cannot adjudicate. What it can adjudicate is the $200 million you laundered. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 25 years in a federal penitentiary." A low, keening wail came from Damien. It was the sound of a man who had just realized the game was in fact over. Erin stood up. She did not look back. She walked out of the courtroom, past the frantic reporters, and into the sunlight. As the armored SUV pulled away, a single hot tear rolled down her cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of release. The last bit of poison finally leaving her system. The penthouse at 157 was sold. The Sotheby's auction was the talk of New York. The Patek Philippe, watch the one from the TMZ photo, sold for triple its value to an anonymous buyer in Dubai. The art collection, the wine, the furniture, it was all liquidated. Erin now legally. Erin. Alani, her mother's maiden name, made 2 announcements. First, a check for $50 million was delivered to the pension fund of Sterling Innovations employees, making them whole. Second, an anonymous $30 million donation was made to New York Presbyterian, endowing a new research wing for preeclampsia and high-risk pregnancies to be named the Leo Alani Center for Maternal Fetal Medicine. The rest, a staggering sum, was placed into a trust. Erin and Leo disappeared. The society pages mourned her loss, then moved on. Napa Valley was not a hiding place. It was a choice. Erin had chosen earth, not glass. She had chosen quiet, not noise. Her home was a sprawling single-story ranch house made of reclaimed wood and pale, sun-warmed stone. It sat on 20 acres of wild, unkempt land overlooking a lavender field and a small, struggling vineyard she had no intention of ever making profitable. Leo, now a sturdy, babbling toddler, was not a sterling heir. He was a little boy with a smudge of dirt on his nose, a passionate interest in worms, and his mother's bright, curious eyes. The letters from FCIO Otisville had started arriving 3 months ago. They were a case study in narcissistic collapse. The first letter. Rage, Erin. You didn't even have the courage to face me. You set me up. You and that lawyer bitch. You turned Serafina against me. You think this is justice. This is a joke. You'll pay for this. I will get out. I will appeal. I will see you in court. You will not keep my son from me. It was postmarked Return to Sender by Harriet's office before Erin ever saw it, the second letter. Bargaining. This one, Harriet forwarded. My dearest Erin, I am a broken man. This place, it's not for people like me. I have time to think. I see it all clearly now. I was sick. The pressure, the company. It wasn't me. And Serafina. She was a poison, a disease. She manipulated me. I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Please, Erin. Think of Leo. A boy needs his father. Just write a letter to the parole board. Tell them I'm not a monster. Tell them I was under undue stress. We can fix this. I can fix this. I love you. I've always loved you. Erin read this one, her hand steady. She felt a faint, clinical pity. He was still performing, still looking for the right combination of words to unlock the cage. She put it in a file. The third letter, desperation. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am on my knees. I dream about the hospital. I dream about the phone calls I missed. I don't know who that man was. I want to die. Please just send me a picture of the boy. That's all I ask. Just one picture. Please, Erin. Don't be so cruel. She handed the file to her head of security, an ex-Mossad agent named Zev. Ensure this federal prison's mail screening is as good as they say it is, and that he never, ever receives a reply. Damien Sterling was a ghost, and she was done being haunted. Today was a good day. It was the grand opening of the Leo Gallery. It was a small, light-filled space in downtown St. Helena. It was not a billion-dollar vanity project. It was a small working gallery. Its mission was simple: to find and fund emerging female artists. The first exhibition was a roaring success. A young, brilliant painter from Ohio, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, had sold her entire collection in the first hour. Erin was in the back office, signing a check for the artist, when her phone buzzed. It was Harriet. "Well, I hear you're the new toast of wine country," Harriet said, her voice crackling with amusement. Erin laughed, a sound that was full and easy now. "We sold some paintings. A woman's life is going to change. It feels good. It feels real." "I'm proud of you, Erin," Harriet said, her voice softening. "You did it. You built a real life." "We did it, Harriet. Thank you." "Oh, I'm not just calling to congratulate you. I'm calling with a little epilogue." "Oh, Serafina Volt." Erin paused. "I heard she was launching a spiritual crypto coin." "She was," Harriet said, a predator's smile in her voice. "It was called a Volt coin, promising cosmic returns and chakra-based blockchain. It was, of course, a multi-million-dollar rug pull, a classic Ponzi scheme. She was trying to flee the country on a private jet to Dubai when the U.S. Marshals picked her up at Teterboro." Erin's eyes widened. "No." "Oh, yes. She was still on federal probation. Remember? From our little case, fleeing the country is a major violation. Committing a new 9-figure fraud is, well, it's just on brand, as she would say." "So, what happens?" "She just got sentenced. A judge in Los Angeles who apparently has zero tolerance for New Age scams threw the book at her. No more probation. No more tell-all books. Serafina Volt is going to serve 3 years at the Federal Correctional Institution in Victorville. Full time." Erin was silent for a moment, processing. The universe, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. The karma had finally been delivered. "Well," Erin said slowly, walking out of the office and into the bustling gallery, "I guess you can't build a life on bad foundations." "Poetic, Erin. Poetic. Now go sell some art. I'll send you my bill." Harriet hung up. Erin slipped her phone into her pocket. She looked around the room. It was filled with laughter, with people arguing passionately about brushstrokes and light. Her nanny was in the corner, holding Leo. He saw his mother, and his face lit up in a grin that was pure, unfiltered sunlight. He reached for her. Erin walked over and took him. He was heavy, solid, and real in her arms. He smelled like baby powder and sunshine. He'd stumbled while she was on the phone and had a small, dusty smudge on his nose. He was a sturdy, happy boy, and he'd pushed himself right back up. She kissed his forehead. The ghosts of the past, the smell of Baccarat Rouge 540, the beeping of the heart monitor, the icy rage of a man in a prison cell, were gone. They weren't just quiet. They were gone. This was her anchor. This was her love. "Come on, Leo," she whispered, holding him tight. "Let's go home." And that is the story of Erin's revenge. It wasn't just about catching a cheating husband. It was about a woman finding her power when she was at her most vulnerable. It's a story of survival, hard karma, and the incredible strength of a mother. What started in a hospital bed ended in the fall of an empire. What did you think of Damien's downfall? Was Serafina's karma? Hard enough. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama and justice, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a single dramatic story. Thank you for listening.
They say the best revenge is living well, but what happens when your husband freezes your bank accounts, moves his mistress into your vacation home, and refuses to sign the divorce papers just to watch you starve? Vivian thought her life was over when Grant locked her out of their penthouse. He thought he could break her by dragging out court proceedings for 2 years. He thought wrong. He didn't know that by stalling he was pushing her right into the arms of the one man he feared most. This is the story of how a discarded wife lost everything only to gain the world. You won't believe the twist at the end. The envelope on the mahogany desk wasn't just paper. It was a weapon. Vivian stared at it, her knuckles white, as she gripped the edge of the table. We were in the library of the sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly, amplifying the silence. "He's not coming, Vivian," the lawyer said softly. "His name was Arthur Penhaligon, one of those old money attorneys who charged $1 and $200 an hour just to breathe the same air as you. Grant has filed another motion for continuance. He claims he's currently medically indisposed and cannot attend the deposition." Vivian let out a dark, humorless laugh. "Medically indisposed Arthur, I saw his Instagram. He's on a yacht in Mykonos with a 22-year-old struggling DJ named Chloe. He's not sick, he's stalling." "We know that," Arthur sighed, removing his spectacles. "But the judge is, let's say, sympathetic to the prestige of the Sterling Holloway firm. Grant has friends in high places. If he says he has high blood pressure, the court waits until his blood pressure drops." This had been going on for 18 months. 18 months of hell. Grant Holloway wasn't just a successful venture capitalist. He was a narcissist of the highest order. When Vivian caught him cheating, not just a slip-up, but a 2-year parallel life with an influencer, she had packed a bag and filed for divorce the next morning. She expected a fight. She didn't expect a siege. Grant's strategy was simple attrition. He cut off her access to the joint accounts. He canceled her credit cards, claiming security breaches. He utilized every legal loophole in the state of Connecticut to delay the asset division. He wanted her to come crawling back, or at the very least agree to a settlement that would leave her with pennies. "I can't keep doing this, Arthur," Vivian whispered, looking at the rain lashing against the window. "I have $300 to my name. I'm staying in a studio apartment in Queens that smells like boiled cabbage because I can't afford a hotel. I was a partner at an art gallery before I married him. I had a life. And we will get it back," Arthur promised, though he didn't look convincing. "But right now, unless you sign the NDA and the settlement he offered, which is frankly insulting, we have to wait for the court date in November." November. It was currently July. Vivian stood up, smoothing down the skirt of the only designer suit she hadn't sold on the Real yet. "I won't sign. I helped him build Holloway Ventures. I hosted the dinners, I charmed the investors, I proofread the pitch decks when he was too drunk to see straight. I earned my share." She walked out of the office and into the humid New York afternoon. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from a friend, a screenshot of a TMZ article. Headline: Grant Holloway spotted at the Pierre with mystery blonde. Sources say the divorce is amicable and wife is mentally unstable. Vivian felt the bile rise in her throat. Mentally unstable. That was his new narrative. If he could paint her as crazy, he could invalidate the prenup modification they signed 5 years ago. She needed money. She needed a job. But Grant had blacklisted her. Every gallery in Manhattan knew that hiring Vivian meant losing Grant's patronage. He was strangling her slowly, publicly, and with a smile. She walked toward the subway, her heels clicking on the pavement. She stopped at a bodega to buy a bottle of water, counting out the loose change in her purse. "Declined?" the cashier said, bored. "Excuse me." "Card declined." Vivian froze. It was her personal debit card, the one account Grant wasn't supposed to be able to touch. She checked her banking app. Balance: $450. Overdraft fees. A text popped up from Grant. "Oops. Looks like the IRS audited our joint tax filings from 2019. Since we're still legally married, they froze everything until it's sorted. Could take months. If you need cash, Chloe suggests you try DoorDash. I hear they're hiring. XOXO." Vivian stared at the screen until the tears blurred the text. He wasn't just dragging it out. He was hunting her. She walked out of the bodega waterless and sat on a bench in Central Park. She looked up at the towering luxury condos of Billionaires Row. Somewhere up there, people were safe. "I will kill him," she muttered to herself. "I will absolutely destroy him." But she didn't have a weapon, not yet. What she didn't know was that the weapon was about to walk into her life, and he wouldn't look like a lawyer or a judge. He would look like the devil in a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. 3 weeks later, Vivian wasn't doing DoorDash. She was doing something arguably more humiliating for a woman who used to chair the Met Gala committee. She was working catering. It was a masked ball charity event at the St. Regis. The agency didn't care who she was as long as she could balance a tray of champagne flutes and remain invisible. The mask requirement was a blessing. It hid her face. If anyone from her old life saw her serving hors d'oeuvres, the gossip would destroy what little dignity she had left. The ballroom was a sea of silk diamonds and hollow laughter. Vivian moved through the crowd like a ghost, dodging groping hands and spilled drinks. "Champagne, sir?" she asked a group of men near the orchestra. One of them turned. Vivian's blood ran cold. It was Preston Calloway, one of Grant's best friends and his CFO. He was laughing, holding a scotch. "So I told Grant," Preston bellowed, "just wait until the vesting period hits in October. Once the IPO goes public, the valuation triples. If he's still married, he can claim spousal immunity on the older assets if the SEC comes knocking. He just needs to keep the bitch on the hook for 3 more months." Vivian's hand trembled. The champagne flutes rattled. IPO vesting period. Grant had told the court his company was near bankruptcy. He claimed the assets were worthless, but Preston just admitted they were about to triple in value, and Grant was stalling the divorce to use Vivian as a legal shield against the SEC Securities and Exchange Commission. He was committing fraud, and he was using her as the scapegoat. She was so stunned she didn't notice the man stepping backward behind her. Crash! Vivian collided with a solid wall of muscle. The tray tipped. 5 flutes of vintage Dom Perignon cascaded down the back of a midnight blue tuxedo jacket. The music seemed to stop. The nearby conversation died instantly. Vivian gasped, dropping to her knees to pick up the glass shards. "Oh my God! I am so sorry. I am so sorry." She looked up. The man she had soaked turned around slowly. He wasn't wearing a mask. He didn't need to. When you are Sterling Vance, you are the face of power. Sterling Vance, owner of Vance Global, tech mogul, aerospace pioneer, a man worth roughly $40 billion. He was known for 2 things: his ruthlessness in business and his absolute hatred of the press. He was the Wolf of Wall Street, if the wolf had actual teeth and didn't do drugs. He looked down at his ruined jacket, then at Vivian. His eyes were a piercing, icy gray. "You," Preston Calloway sneered, stepping in. "You clumsy idiot. Do you know who this is? You just ruined a $10,000 jacket." Preston grabbed Vivian's arm to haul her up. "Security, get this trash out of—" "Let her go," a deep voice rumbled. It wasn't loud, but it silenced the room. Sterling Vance didn't shout. He commanded. Preston released Vivian immediately, looking terrified. "Mr. Vance, I was just handling the help. She ruined your suit." Sterling ignored Preston entirely. He looked down at Vivian, who was still on her knees, a piece of glass cutting slightly into her palm. He saw the blood. He saw the terrified eyes behind her cheap lace mask. He extended a hand. "Stand up," Sterling said. Vivian hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was warm and firm. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. I can't pay for the cleaning," Vivian stammered, her voice breaking. "I'll lose this job." Sterling looked at her intently. He tilted his head, studying her eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked intrigued. "You're Vivian Holloway," he said. It wasn't a question. Vivian froze. She reached up and ripped the mask off. There was no point in hiding now. "I was Vivian Holloway. Now I'm just the waitress who ruined your night." Preston Calloway's jaw dropped. "Vivian Grant's wife, Jesus, look at you. This is pathetic." Sterling's gaze snapped to Preston. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mr. Calloway," Sterling said, his voice smooth as velvet but sharp as a razor. "I believe I heard you discussing an upcoming IPO for Holloway Ventures. Something about avoiding the SEC. Preston turned pale. That was private conversation. Jokes among friends." "I don't find fraud funny," Sterling said. He turned back to Vivian. He took off his soaked tuxedo jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt underneath, and draped the heavy wet jacket over a nearby chair. "Ms. Holloway," Sterling said, "my car is outside. I think you and I have something to discuss." "I'm on shift," Vivian whispered, though her heart was pounding against her ribs. "Not anymore," Sterling said. He signaled to the floor manager, who was rushing over. "She's finished for the night. Put her wages on my tab. Actually add a 0 to it." He looked at Vivian, extending his elbow. "Walk with me, unless you prefer to stay here and listen to Mr. Calloway explain how your husband is swindling you." Vivian looked at Preston, who was frantically texting on his phone, probably warning Grant. She looked at the catering manager, who was glaring at her. Then she looked at Sterling Vance, a man who could buy and sell her husband 10 times over before breakfast. She untied her apron, let it drop to the floor, and took his arm. "Lead the way, Mr. Vance." As they walked out of the St. Regis, cameras flashed. The photo that would hit the internet the next morning wouldn't be of a crying woman. It would be of Vivian, head held high, walking arm in arm with the most eligible bachelor on the planet. Grant Holloway was about to choke on his morning mimosa. The interior of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was quieter than a church confession booth. The city lights of Manhattan blurred into streaks of gold and neon red against the tinted, rain-slicked windows. Vivian sat rigidly on the butter-soft leather, her hands still trembling slightly. She was sitting next to a man who was essentially an economic superpower, wearing a stained catering uniform. "Drink this," Sterling said, opening a hidden compartment and pouring amber liquid into a crystal glass. "It's Macallan 25. It burns, but it settles the nerves." Vivian took it. She downed it in one gulp. It burned, but the warmth that spread through her chest was grounding. "Why?" she asked, her voice finding its strength. "Why help me? You don't do charity, Mr. Vance. Everyone knows that." Sterling turned to look at her, his face illuminated by the passing streetlights. "You're right. I don't do charity. I do investments. And right now you are a distressed asset with incredibly high potential yield." "I'm a waitress with negative $400 in her bank account," Vivian countered. "No," Sterling corrected. "You are the only person who knows the intimate details of Grant Holloway's life during the years he was allegedly building his empire. Preston Calloway has a big mouth, but he's right about one thing: the IPO. Grant is trying to take Holloway Ventures public in October. He's valuing the company at $2 billion. It's a house of cards, Vivian said bitterly. I saw the books before he locked me out. He's moving debt into shell companies. Sterling smiled a predatory expression that didn't reach his eyes. Exactly. And I want to burn that house down. Grant stole the proprietary algorithm for my first logistics platform 7 years ago. He settled out of court, sealed the records, and used my tech to build his seed capital. I've been waiting 7 years for him to overextend himself. Now with this divorce, he's vulnerable. The car pulled into the underground entrance of the Vance Tower in Tribeca. Security guards, massive men in earpieces, opened the doors before the car even fully stopped. They took a private elevator to the penthouse. When the doors opened, Vivian gasped. It wasn't just an apartment, it was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Hudson River. I have clothes in the guest suite, Sterling said, walking toward a massive oak desk that dominated the living area. My sister stays here when she's in town. She's about your size. Shower, change, then come back here. We have work to do. Vivian hesitated. Work? You want your life back, Vivian? Sterling asked, loosening his tie. You want to humiliate the man who left you penniless while he parties in Mykonos? Then stop acting like a victim. Go wash the catering off you. Tonight we stop playing defense. 30 minutes later, Vivian emerged. She was wearing a silk cashmere lounge set that probably cost more than her first car. Her hair was wet, combed back, revealing the sharp, aristocratic bone structure that Grant had once loved to show off at galas. Sterling was on the phone speaking in rapid-fire Mandarin. He hung up when he saw her. Better, he said. He gestured to the chair opposite him. On the desk there were stacks of files. I need you to think, Vivian. Think back to 2019. The tax audit Grant mentioned in his text. Did you sign the returns? Vivian closed her eyes, casting her mind back to that year. It was the year Grant had bought the villa in St. Bart's, the year he had started staying late at the office. I signed them, she said slowly. But he didn't let me read them. He brought them to me at 2:00 a.m. after a gala. I was exhausted. He said his accountants handled it. I trusted him. Standard move, Sterling muttered, making a note. Did he ever mention a company called Apex Holdings? Vivian's eyes snapped open. Apex, yes. I saw a letter from Apex in his briefcase once. I asked him about it. He got furious. He said it was just a holding company for his parents' estate. Sterling slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a corporate registry document from the Cayman Islands. Apex Holdings isn't his parents' estate, Sterling said grimly. It's the entity where he's hiding the intellectual property rights to his software. He's licensing his own tech to his own company at exorbitant rates to artificially lower his profits so he doesn't have to pay you alimony. Then once the divorce is final, he'll acquire Apex and the money will flow back to him tax-free. Vivian felt sick. He's stealing our marital assets and charging the company for it. It's fraud, tax evasion, and insider trading all wrapped in a bow, Sterling said. But we need proof. Physical proof. Did he keep a physical ledger? A hard drive? Anything offline? Vivian stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city, her mind racing. Grant was paranoid. He didn't trust the cloud. He always said hackers were everywhere. The safe, she whispered. The one in the Greenwich house? Sterling asked. My team says he emptied it. No. Vivian turned around, a fire igniting in her eyes. Not the one in the house, the one on the boat. Sterling raised an eyebrow. The yacht in Mykonos. No, the old fishing boat, the Lady V. He bought it when we first got married. He keeps it docked in a ragged marina in New Jersey. He tells everyone he sold it years ago, but I know he pays the slip fees in cash. He calls it his meditation spot. He goes there when he thinks the walls are closing in. Sterling stared at her for a long moment. A slow smile spread across his face. It changed his entire demeanor, making him look less like a machine and more like a man who had just found gold. New Jersey, Sterling said, picking up his phone. I love New Jersey. He dialed a number. Prepare the helicopter. And call Helen Thorne. Tell her I have a case that's going to get her disbarred if she's not careful. She'll love it. He looked at Vivian. Get some sleep, Mrs. Holloway. Tomorrow we go fishing. The next morning, Vivian woke up to the smell of espresso and the sight of a clothing rack rolling into her room. A petite woman with severe glasses and a tape measure around her neck was standing there. Mr. Vance said you need battle armor, the woman said briskly. I am Claudette. I have pulled pieces from the archives. Dior McQueen Saint Laurent. Sharp shoulders, aggressive silhouettes. If you are going to war, you cannot look like a wife. You must look like a widow who just buried the husband she killed. Vivian touched the fabric of a black blazer. It was structured powerful. She realized Sterling wasn't just helping her legally, he was rebranding her. By 10:00 a.m., Vivian was transformed. She wore a sharp white architectural blouse, high-waisted black trousers that elongated her legs and stilettos that could puncture a lung. Her hair was blown out straight and sleek. She walked into the main room. Sterling was there, dressed in a gray suit, reading a tablet. He looked up and for a second he didn't say anything. He just nodded. Helen is here, he said. Sitting on the sofa was a woman who looked like a grandmother but had the reputation of a cartel enforcer. Helen Thorne, the divorce attorney who had famously stripped a Russian oligarch of his superyacht and his private island in a single hearing. So, Helen said, her voice raspy from years of smoking. This is the woman Grant Holloway thinks is stupid. He thinks I'm weak, Vivian corrected, sitting down. There's a difference. Good? Helen grinned. I like the weak ones. They have better surprise attacks. Helen opened a folder. Sterling briefed me on the Lady V boat in New Jersey. His security team went there at 4:00 a.m. They didn't break in, that would be illegal. But they did acquire the marina's security logs and found a very interesting discrepancy in the ownership papers. The boat is registered to Chloe Miller. Vivian's jaw tightened. His mistress. Exactly, Helen said. Which means if we can prove Chloe doesn't have the income to buy that boat, it's a gift of marital assets. That opens the door for a forensic audit of her accounts. And through her we get to Grant. But we need to rattle him first, Sterling interjected. Grant is comfortable. He thinks Vivian is destitute. He needs to see that the dynamic has shifted. Lunch, Vivian said suddenly. They both looked at her. Grant is back from Mykonos today, Vivian said. He always goes to the grill on 52nd Street for a welcome home power lunch with his partners on Tuesdays. It's a ritual. He sits at the center table. Sterling checked his watch. It's 11:30. If we leave now, we can take the table right next to him. I can't afford lunch at the grill, Vivian said, her old reflex kicking in. Sterling stood up and buttoned his jacket. He walked over to her, invading her personal space just enough to make her breath hitch. Vivian, he said softly, you are with me now. You don't pay for anything. You just sit there, look beautiful, and look at me like I'm the most fascinating man in the world. Can you do that? Vivian looked into his gray eyes. It wouldn't be hard. I think I can manage. The grill, 12:45 p.m. The restaurant was buzzing with the sound of deals being made. The air smelled of truffle oil and expensive cologne. When Sterling Vance walked in, the room went quiet. It was rare to see him in public. When they saw the woman on his arm, the quiet turned into a murmur. Vivian walked with her head high. She saw him immediately. Grant Holloway was sitting at the prime center table, tanned from grease, laughing loudly with Preston Calloway and two other bankers. He looked like the golden boy he always pretended to be. Then he looked up. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. He watched his destitute wife, who was supposed to be serving appetizers or crying in Queens, being led by the maitre d' to the private alcove table, the one reserved for royalty and presidents. He watched Sterling Vance pull out her chair. He watched Vivian laugh at something Sterling whispered, a light, carefree sound Grant hadn't heard in years. Grant's face turned a blotchy red. He shoved his chair back and stood up. Grant, sit down, Preston hissed. That's Sterling Vance. Grant ignored him. He marched over to their table. Vivian. His voice was a mix of shock and fury. Vivian turned slowly, sipping her sparkling water. She looked at him with cool detachment. Hello, Grant. You're back early. I thought Chloe needed more time to work on her tan. Grant's knuckles gripped the edge of their table. What the hell is this? Who is paying for this? You're broke, Vivian. You're embarrassing yourself. Sterling didn't even look up from his menu. Your wife is having lunch, Holloway. Lower your voice or I'll have security remove you. Grant sneered at Sterling. Stay out of this, Vance. You don't know her. She's a leech. She's trying to bleed me dry. He turned back to Vivian. You think being seen with him scares me? You think this changes anything? I still control the accounts. I still own the house. You are nothing without me. Vivian set her glass down. The clink was sharp. She stood up. In her heels, she was almost eye level with him. I used to think that she said her voice steady and loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I used to think I was nothing, but then I remembered who proofread the patent filings for the Holloway algorithm. I remembered who organized the seed rounds, and I remembered where you keep the ledger for Apex Holdings. The color drained from Grant's face so fast it looked like he was going to faint. You don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. Don't I? Vivian smiled and it was terrifying. Enjoy your lunch, Grant. I hear the prison food is quite bland, so you should savor the truffles while you can. Grant stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Sterling stood up, then towering over Grant. He placed a hand on Grant's shoulder, a gesture that looked friendly but was clearly a threat. I believe the lady is finished with you, Sterling said. Run along, Grant. Go call your lawyers. You're going to need them. Grant stumbled back, looking around the room. Everyone was staring. The humiliation was total. He turned and fled the restaurant, leaving Preston and the bankers staring in shock. Vivian sat back down, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She felt dizzy. Sterling reached across the table and took her hand. His thumb grazed her knuckles. Breathe, he commanded gently. You did it. Did you see his face? Vivian whispered, a hysterical laugh bubbling up. He looked scared. He is scared, Sterling said. But a scared animal is dangerous. He's going to retaliate, and he's going to do it dirty. As if on cue, Vivian's phone buzzed on the table. It was an email notification, but it wasn't from Grant. It was a Google alert she had set up for her own name years ago and forgotten about. New article indexed. Daily Mail headline. Gold digger exposed, Vivian Holloway's secret past in Las Vegas and the escort rumors. Vivian's blood ran cold. She grabbed the phone. What is it? Sterling asked, his grip on her hand tightening. He's not just fighting me in court, Vivian whispered, showing him the screen. He's leaking fake stories. He's going to destroy my reputation so no one believes me about the fraud. Sterling looked at the headline. His eyes darkened to the color of a stormy sea. Let him try, Sterling said. He just brought a tabloid to a gunfight. Vivian, are you ready to go to New Jersey? Now. Right now. We need that ledger before he realizes you weren't bluffing about knowing where it is. If he gets to the boat first, we lose. Sterling threw a stack of cash on the table to cover a lunch they hadn't eaten. Let's go, he said. The helicopter is waiting. As they ran out of the restaurant hand in hand, Vivian realized something. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't running away from the fire. She was running straight into it, and she had a flamethrower by her side. But the secrets on the Lady Five were worse than just financial fraud. They were about to uncover something that would put not just Grant, but half of Wall Street behind bars, and put a target on Vivian's back that no amount of money could remove. The chopper blades sliced through the gray sky, chopping the rain into mist. Below them, the Hudson River was a ribbon of steel. Vivian sat with a headset on, clutching her knees. The adrenaline from the restaurant confrontation was fading, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He knows we're coming, she said into the mic. Grant isn't smart, but he's paranoid. If he called the marina manager, the boat could be gone. Sterling looked out the window, his profile sharp against the gloomy backdrop. The marina manager in that part of Jersey is on the payroll of the local organized crime syndicate. Incidentally, my security firm contracts with them for logistical support. The boat isn't moving. They landed at a private helipad in Weehawken where a black SUV was waiting. This wasn't the Rolls-Royce. This was an armored Suburban with bulletproof glass. As they drove toward the marina, the scenery shifted from luxury condos to rusted chain-link fences and abandoned shipping containers. The marina was a graveyard of forgotten ambition, rotting fishing trawlers docked next to once glamorous speedboats that hadn't seen the ocean in a decade. "The Lady Vive is at the end of Dock 4, Vivian said, pointing. It was a 45-foot Sea Ray looking tired and unwashed. The name Lady Vive was peeling off the stern, a cruel metaphor for their marriage. "Kozlov," Sterling barked at his head of security, a massive man sitting in the front seat. "Secure the perimeter. No one gets down that dock." "Copy, boss." Sterling and Vivian stepped out into the rain. They ran down the wooden planks, the water soaking Vivian's new architectural blouse instantly. "Where is it?" Sterling asked as they jumped onto the deck. "He wouldn't put it in the safe." Vivian said, her mind racing back to the days when Grant would get drunk and brag about his genius hiding spots. "He thinks safes are for decoys. He likes plain sight mechanics." She rushed into the cabin. It smelled of stale beer and mildew. She tore the cushions off the seating area. Nothing. She opened the galley cupboards. Nothing. "Think, Vivian," Sterling urged, watching the dock through the porthole. "You said he called this his meditation spot. What does he do here? He drinks. He smokes cigars. He plays chess." Vivian's eyes darted to the small bolted-down table in the corner. On it sat an ornate marble chessboard. It had been a wedding gift from Preston Calloway. She rushed over to it. The pieces were glued down standard for a boat, but the board itself looked too thick. "Grant isn't smart enough for chess," Vivian muttered. "He only plays to look intelligent." She grabbed the queen, the black queen, and twisted it. It didn't move. She tried the white king. It clicked. With a soft hiss, a magnetic latch released. The top of the marble board popped up a fraction of an inch. "Got you," she whispered. She lifted the heavy stone slab. Inside the hollowed-out base was not just a ledger. It was a hard drive, a stack of passports, and a black notebook. Sterling was beside her in an instant. He picked up the passports. "Grant Holloway, Preston Calloway. Different names, different countries," Sterling noted grimly. "St. Kitts, Cyprus, Malta. These aren't just tax evasion tools. These are escape routes." Vivian opened the black notebook. It wasn't just accounting numbers. It was a list of names and dates. Senator H. $50K consulting fee. Judge M. $20K campaign donation. Cash Project Aeon. Inbound transfer. 5 NM. Moscow via Shell. Vivian gasped. "Sterling, look at this." Sterling scanned the page. His eyes widened. "Moscow Project Aeon. That's a sanctioned Russian energy consortium. Grant isn't just hiding assets from you. He's laundering money for entities on the OFAC watch list. This is treason-level fraud." "We have to go," Vivian said, clutching the hard drive to her chest. "We have to take this to the FBI. We need to—" Thud. The boat rocked violently. Sterling spun around. Heavy footsteps hammered on the deck above. "Kozlov," Sterling said into his earpiece. Static. "Kozlov." The cabin door kicked open. It wasn't the police. And it wasn't Grant. 2 men in dark raincoats stood there. They wore balaclavas. One held a crowbar. The other held a suppressed pistol. "Hand it over," the man with the gun said. His accent was thick Eastern European. "The drive. Now." Vivian froze. She backed up against the kitchenette counter, shielding the drive with her body. Sterling stepped in front of her. He held his hands up, palms open, but his stance was balanced, ready. You're making a mistake, Sterling said calmly. I am Sterling Vance. Whatever Grant is paying you, I will double it right now. Wire transfer, Bitcoin, cash. The gunman laughed. Grant didn't hire us, Mr. Vance. Grant is a loose end. We work for the people in that book. Vivian's heart stopped. Grant had gotten in too deep. The Russians weren't protecting him. They were cleaning up the mess. And right now she and Sterling were the mess. Give us the drive, or the woman dies first, the gunman said, raising the weapon. Sterling looked at Vivian. His eyes communicated a silent message. Trust me. Okay, Sterling said slowly. Okay. I'm reaching into my jacket. I'm getting the wallet. I said the drive. I'm buying her life. Sterling roared, his voice suddenly filling the small cabin. In the split second, the gunman looked confused by the outburst. Sterling moved. He didn't go for the gun. He grabbed the heavy marble chessboard top from the table and hurled it like a discus. It smashed into the gunman's face with a sickening crack. The gun went off, the bullet shattering the mirror behind Vivian. The second man lunged with the crowbar. Sterling ducked, took a blow to the shoulder that made him grunt in pain, and drove a fist into the man's solar plexus, followed by a knee to the face. It was brutal, fast, and messy. Vivian, move! Sterling shouted, kicking the gun away from the groaning man on the floor. Vivian scrambled over the debris, clutching the evidence. They burst out onto the deck. Kozlov was there. He had been engaged with a third assailant on the dock, but had finished the job. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Boss, we have to clear out. More vehicles incoming. Go! Sterling grabbed Vivian's hand. They sprinted down the slippery dock, the rain lashing their faces. Headlights swept across the marina entrance. Tires screeched. They dove into the armored SUV. Drive! Sterling yelled. The SUV roared to life, tearing out of the parking lot just as a black van swerved to block the exit. The SUV clipped the van's bumper metal, screeching on metal, and fishtailed onto the main road. Vivian sat in the back seat, shaking uncontrollably. She looked at Sterling. He was clutching his shoulder. You're hurt, she whispered. I'm fine, he gritted out. He looked at the hard drive in her lap. We have the smoking gun, Vivian. But now the war has changed. This isn't a divorce anymore. It's a manhunt. The Vance Tower penthouse was on lockdown. Private security contractors with military-grade rifles stood at the elevator banks. The windows were shuttered. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Helen Thorne sat at the dining table, surrounded by 3 forensic accountants and a cybersecurity expert. The hard drive from the Lady Five was plugged into an air-gapped laptop. Vivian sat on the sofa, a blanket wrapped around her. A doctor had just finished bandaging a cut on her arm from the shattered mirror. Across the room, Sterling was having his shoulder iced. He had refused to go to the hospital. Well, Helen said, taking off her glasses and rubbing her temples. I've been a divorce lawyer for 30 years. I've seen hidden assets. I've seen secret families. I've seen drug stashes. But this, she pointed at the screen, this is the holy grail of corporate RICO cases. Break it down, Sterling said, walking over. He had changed into a fresh black sweater, his movement stiff but steady. Grant Holloway and Preston Calloway have been using Holloway Ventures to wash money for the Volkov Group. That's the Russian entity, Helen explained. They inflate the value of their tech assets, sell fake licenses to shell companies owned by Volkov, and the payment comes back as clean venture capital. Grant takes a 15% cut. He's moved over $40 million in 3 years. And the divorce? Vivian asked. Her voice was stronger now. The shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, hard rage. The divorce was the trigger, Helen said. Grant couldn't afford to split the assets because the assets don't really exist. It's all dirty money. If a court-appointed auditor looked too closely, the Russians would be exposed. That's why he was stalling. He needed to cash out the IPO, pay off the Russians, and disappear before the audit happened. He wasn't afraid of losing money, Vivian realized. He was afraid of being executed. Precisely, Sterling said. And now that we have this drive, he's a dead man walking. The Russians know the security is breached. They will try to silence him. And us." Vivian stood up. She walked to the window, looking through the slats of the blinds at the city below. "I'm not hiding," she said. Sterling frowned. "Vivian, there are hitmen looking for this drive." "No." She turned to face them. "If we hide, we look guilty. Grant is already spinning the narrative. Look at the news." She turned on the massive TV on the wall. "Breaking news tech mogul. Grant Holloway accuses estranged wife of corporate espionage." On the screen, Grant was standing on the steps of the courthouse looking disheveled and frantic. He was playing the victim perfectly. "My wife," Grant stammered into the microphones, "has been manipulated by a corporate rival, Sterling Vance. They stole proprietary trade secrets today. They assaulted my staff. She is mentally unwell and dangerous." Vivian watched the screen, her face unreadable. "He's trying to get ahead of the story," Helen said. "He wants to get a warrant for your arrest so the police seize the drive before we can decrypt it all." "Then we give it to them," Vivian said. The room went silent. "What?" Sterling asked. "We don't give it to the police," Vivian clarified. "We give it to the world. Grant thrives in the shadows. The Russians thrive in the shadows. So let's turn on the lights, all of them." She looked at Sterling. "You own a media conglomerate, don't you? The New York Chronicle?" Sterling smiled slowly. "I do." "I want an interview," Vivian said. "Live. Tonight. I want to walk into the lion's den and drop the meat right on the floor." Helen Thorne cackled, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking rule of the penthouse. "God, I love this woman. Sterling, she's smarter than you." "Set up the interview," Sterling ordered his assistant. "Prime time, 8:00 p.m. 8:00 p.m. The broadcast. The studio lights were blinding. Vivian sat in a white chair wearing the same sharp black suit she had worn to the marina, cleaned, but with the faint stain of engine grease still on the cuff, a badge of honor. Across from her was the most respected news anchor in the country. The camera light turned red. "Tonight," the anchor began, "a story of high finance betrayal and a manhunt in Manhattan. We are joined by Vivian Holloway." Vivian looked directly into the camera lens. She didn't look at the anchor. She looked at Grant. She knew he was watching. "I'm not here to talk about my marriage," Vivian began, her voice crystal clear. "I'm here to talk about where your 401k money actually goes." For 20 minutes, Vivian didn't just tell her story. She dismantled Grant's life. She explained the shell companies. She named Apex Holdings. She explained the Volkov connection, and then the coup de grace. "I have submitted all evidence to the FBI and the SEC as of 1 hour ago," Vivian said. "But there is one thing the FBI can't do. They can't give me back the years I wasted believing in a man who sold his soul for a yacht." She leaned forward. "Grant, I know you're watching. The Russians know you lost the drive. You're not useful to them anymore. You're a liability. If I were you, I wouldn't be worrying about your wife. I'd be running." The feed cut. Silence in the studio. Then applause from the crew. Vivian walked off the set, trembling. Sterling was waiting in the wings. He didn't say a word. He just pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. "You were magnificent," he whispered. "Is it over?" she asked. "The fraud is exposed," Sterling said. "The stock for Holloway Ventures just crashed 80% in after-hours trading. He's ruined." But he wasn't just ruined. He was desperate. As they exited the studio to a wall of paparazzi, Sterling's security team formed a wedge. "Get to the car!" Kozlov shouted. Suddenly a figure lunged from the crowd of photographers. It wasn't a hitman, it was Grant. He looked deranged. His eyes were wild, his shirt torn. He had a small silver pistol in his hand, a frantic amateur weapon. "You bitch!" Grant screamed, raising the gun. "You ruined everything!" Time seemed to slow down. Kozlov was too far away. Sterling lunged to cover Vivian, but he was on her right and Grant was on her left. Vivian didn't scream. She didn't cower. She swung her heavy leather handbag weighted down by the hard drive backup she refused to let go of and smashed it into Grant's outstretched arm. The gun clattered to the pavement. Grant shrieked, grabbing his wrist. Before he could recover, Vivian stepped forward and slapped him, a full-force open palm strike that echoed like a gunshot. "That," she snarled, standing over him as he cowered, "is for the cabbage-smelling apartment in Queens." Security swarmed Grant, pinning him to the concrete. Sirens wailed in the distance. The paparazzi flashes went off like a strobe light, capturing the image that would define the decade: Vivian Holloway standing tall like an avenging angel, while her billionaire ex-husband lay sobbing at her feet in the gutter. Sterling stood back watching her. He realized then that he hadn't saved her. She had saved herself, and he was hopelessly, completely in love with her. But as the police dragged Grant away, he screamed one last thing. "It's not over. You don't know what Preston did. You don't know what he put in the—" Grant was shoved into the back of a squad car before he could finish. Vivian looked at Sterling. What did he mean? Sterling's phone buzzed. It was a text from Helen Thorne. "We just decrypted the final folder on the drive. It's not just money, it's biology. Vivian, you need to get back here, now." The war wasn't over. The money was just the surface. The real secret, the one that could still get them killed, was buried in the tech itself. The silence in the penthouse was heavy, broken only by the hum of the server cooling fans. Vivian stood frozen, her hand gripping the back of a leather chair. "Biology," Vivian asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What does that mean?" Helen Thorne didn't look triumphant anymore. She looked sick. She turned the laptop screen toward Vivian. "We found a subdirectory in the Project Aeon folder," Helen said softly. "It's labeled Subject V Toxicity Log." Vivian felt the blood drain from her face. She stepped closer, reading the cold clinical spreadsheet on the screen. January 14th, 2023. Dosage increased to 5 milliurs. Subject reports dizziness/confusion. February 2nd, 2023. Subject missed gala due to migraine. Hallucinations reported. Success. March 10th, 2023. Subject is compliant. Signed transfer documents without reading. "He wasn't just gaslighting you, Vivian," Sterling said, his voice shaking with a suppressed volcanic rage. "He was poisoning you." Vivian read the chemical name listed: scopolamine derivative combined with synthetic psilocybin. "He was drugging me." Vivian realized the pieces of the last 2 years slamming into place. The day she couldn't get out of bed, the time she forgot where she parked the car, the emotional outburst that Grant would record on his phone and show her later saying, "Look how crazy you are, honey." "He did it to invalidate the prenup," Helen explained grimly. "If he could prove you were mentally incompetent, he could get power of attorney. He could sign away your rights to the company's shares. He didn't just want to divorce you, Vivian. He wanted to institutionalize you. And—" Helen scrolled down. "He had taken out a $20 million key person life insurance policy on you, payable to the company in the event of an accidental overdose or suicide." Vivian fell back into the chair. The man she had shared a bed with, the man she had loved for a decade, hadn't just cheated. He had been slowly, meticulously planning her death for profit. The room spun. Sterling was there instantly, kneeling beside her chair. He took her cold hands in his. "He can never hurt you again." Sterling swore, his gray eyes fierce. "I will spend every dollar I have to ensure he never sees the sun again." Vivian looked at the screen, then at Sterling. She didn't cry. The tears were gone. In their place was something harder. Diamond hard. "No," Vivian said. "Don't just send him to prison. Make sure everyone knows. Release the toxicity logs. Release it all." 6 months later. The trial of the People versus Grant Holloway was the most watched event since the O.J. Simpson verdict. The courtroom in Lower Manhattan was packed. When the prosecution displayed the toxicity logs on the giant screens, a collective gasp went through the gallery. Grant, sitting at the defense table, looked like a husk of a man. His tan was gone. His hair was thinning. He wore a cheap suit provided by his public defender because all his assets had been frozen. Preston Calloway had turned state's witness in exchange for a reduced sentence of 5 years. He sang like a canary. He detailed the money laundering, the Russian connections, and the poisoning scheme. Vivian sat in the front row wearing pure white. She looked untouched, ethereal, and untouchable. When the jury foreman stood up, the room held its breath. We find the defendant Grant Holloway guilty on all counts, including attempted murder in the first-degree wire fraud and racketeering. The judge, the Honorable Judge Merrick Garland, a fictionalized version for the story, or use a generic name like Judge Arthur Vance to keep it safe, looked over his spectacles. Mr. Holloway, your greed knows no bounds. You are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole, followed by deportation proceedings for your dual citizenship violations. As the bailiffs cuffed Grant, he looked back at the gallery. He searched for Chloe, his mistress. She wasn't there. She had sold her story to Netflix and moved to Bali. Then Grant saw Vivian. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, perhaps to curse. Vivian simply turned her head away and whispered something to the man sitting next to her. Sterling Vance. Sterling nodded, stood up, and offered Vivian his arm. They walked out of the courtroom together, leaving Grant screaming into the void as he was dragged away to a cell at ADX Florence, the Supermax prison. 1 year later, the charity gala for the New York Neurological Institute was the event of the season. The paparazzi lined the red carpet outside the Met. They were shouting names, desperate for a shot. "Vivian, Vivian, look here!" A sleek black limousine pulled up. But this wasn't Sterling Vance's car. It was hers. Vivian stepped out. She was wearing a custom gold gown that shimmered like liquid fire. She wasn't just a socialite anymore. She was the CEO of Phoenix Logistics, a company she had started with the settlement money from the divorce money she had clawed back from Grant's hidden offshore accounts. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a tycoon. A reporter thrust a microphone in her face. "Vivian, is it true that Phoenix Logistics just surpassed Holloway Ventures' old valuation?" Vivian smiled. "We actually doubled it this morning." "And what about your personal life? Are the rumors true?" Vivian turned. Walking up the carpet behind her was Sterling Vance. He looked as dashing as ever, but he wasn't leading her. He was walking beside her. He stopped, took her hand, and kissed the ring finger. A massive 10-carat yellow diamond sat there. "They aren't rumors," Sterling said to the cameras. She finally said yes. The crowd went wild. Inside the gala, away from the cameras, they stood on the balcony overlooking Central Park. "You know," Sterling said, handing her a glass of champagne, "I was thinking about the day we met. You were covered in champagne and glass. And you were the rudest man in New York." Vivian laughed. "I was captivated," Sterling corrected. "I saw a woman who was broken but standing. Now, I see a woman who runs the world." Vivian looked out at the city lights. She thought about the cold apartment in Queens. She thought about the fear. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who signed papers without reading them, who trusted blindly. That woman was gone. "I didn't want the world, Sterling," she said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I just wanted to be free." "And now?" he asked. Vivian looked up at him, smiling, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "Now," she said, clinking her glass against his, "I'm going to buy the yacht he loved so much and turn it into a floating garbage scow." Sterling threw his head back and laughed. "God, I love you." "I know," Vivian said. "I love me too." And as they stood there, two titans at the top of the world, Vivian knew the truth. The best revenge wasn't living well. The best revenge was outliving the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved. She ended up smiling next to a billionaire, yes. But more importantly, she ended up smiling at herself in the mirror. What a ride! From a catering waitress cleaning up broken glass to a CEO running an empire, Vivian's story proves that rock bottom is just the solid foundation you need to build something new. Grant thought he could bury her, but he forgot that she was a seed. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power when the person you trust most tries to take it away. Vivian didn't just find a billionaire, she became her own hero first. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and ultimate payback, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next crazy real-life drama. What would you have done if you found that toxicity log? Would you have slapped him or done something worse? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.